Sean is the only person I know that has nearly perfect vision and still goes and gets LASIK.
Dude, that's so funny you say that. The doctor who did it was like, I don't think you need this. And he's like, do you wear? He's like, do you? Yeah, he's like, do you wear glasses? And I'm like, yeah, to drive. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna do it, but I think you're gonna have like superhuman vision. So that's what I'm waiting on.
You're kidding, right? Like you didn't actually need LASIK and you went and got it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, like it was just I got glasses. I couldn't see that far away. My wife was making fun of me, so I got them done. And no, he really thinks he's like you'll probably have double the vision of a normal person.
Oh my God!
All right,
that'll be good for you when you're my age. It'll catch up and you'll feel better about yourself.
Just when you thought I couldn't become more of a superhuman ecom player, there you go.
Talk about vision.
LASIK.
It all started with a rumor, a whisper about a private WhatsApp chat where 9-figure entrepreneurs swapped insights, information, and deals behind closed doors. And now, for the first time ever, these operators are pulling back the curtain on their clandestine world. Right here on this podcast, you're about to witness something truly remarkable. A glimpse into the minds and businesses of the world's most successful operators. So sit back, relax, and stay glued to your headphones. The chat is about to begin.
All right, welcome everybody to the Operators Podcast, episode 10. Matt's back from his vacation. We missed him. Sean's here. The new look, the new sunglass Sean look. I think we need to keep it. And we have the incredible Katy Mimari on today. We're stoked to have her, a woman just crushing the D2C world. So, Katy, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, the 18 years, right? So I started this company. The company's Caden Lane. We're a baby products company. So we do baby swaddles, apparel, nursery, things like that. But I was 24 years old when I started it. Same old story as any founder. My friends were having babies and I was not yet pregnant with my first, but it came shortly thereafter, and saw an absence in the marketplace and thought I could do it better. A friend had this like horrible cheesy diaper bag in her car. And I was looking at it and I was like, why are you carrying that? Because she was a more trendy mom. And she was like, that's all that's out there. And I started my first company actually in college. I went to the University of Texas in Austin, and I started a photography business there. I went around and took pictures of babies at schools, like Santa pictures and holding bunnies and things like that. I had saved up the money and actually it was my first really important business lesson in college. And I taught it to myself. I did not learn it in school. And it was that when you have a business where the capacity or the revenue or the income that you drive is only dependent on your own efforts, is where you hit a ceiling higher. And that's what was happening to me, is I could only shoot so many kids. I could only go see so many schools. Santa Claus was seasonal, so it was hard to really grow the business. And I love the idea of developing a company that like somebody in another, city or state could use. At the time, I wasn't even dreaming about people in other countries, right? And so I was kind of just trying to think of like, what product am I going to do? And I was just making up things. I wanted to do apparel, but it was, overly saturated. And maybe I'll do shoes, but I don't know about shoes. And I can't sew a button onto a shirt. So diaper bags came along. I was like, okay, this is it. And I spent the next maybe 2 or 3 months just obsessing over brands that were available and products. And I drew out my first prototypes, and we're actually based out of San Antonio, Texas. So Mexico is only a couple hours south. And I found a manufacturer in Guadalajara. And at this point I was pregnant. And so I took my pregnant butt down to Mexico and negotiated with the factory there and came out with our first prototypes. And I actually placed my first order for production before I even had a single customer. So I hadn't yet even gone door to door. Yeah. So that was my
that confidence
first.
or ignorance?
Both, probably. I was only 24. So it was, I think I'm really good at kind of having like a fuck it attitude. I wanted to believe that I could do it. And I just, in my research of all these other brands, I was like, it's not rocket science. Like, you just have to have a really great product and people will buy it. You can't go in it to the other way. I want to have a business.
No, you're sucking up the Panzer. That's what this is.
I'm always going on and on about it. Starts with the product. Sorry.
It
hard
does.
being right all the time. It's hard being right all the time, guys.
Yeah. So once I got my first purchase order, was about $20,000. And that was the capital I used. It was from my savings account for my first business. And I put it all into it. They were delivered into my garage. And I went door to door to local, like brick and mortar boutique stores. And the first one went and I wrote an order and, they loved it. Went to the next one. Then I expanded into cities, Austin, Dallas, Houston, and then started going to states. I went to my first market in New York. And remember, guys, this is back in like early 2004, 2005. If you were going into any kind of product development, you had to go to market. And you put in your time there. You had a booth that was in the back of the show. You had to kind of earn your way up.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go there days early and spend a fortune on these booths.
That's like
it was
on the west side, right? Like near the West Side Highway, where that is that where that was?
It's up in the piers. What are the
the piers? Yeah, the piers over there. Yeah.
So that was my first market. And, y'all won't care about this, but if there's any women listening, I actually took a 4-week-old baby there with me.
Whoa.
And I was due because remember I was pregnant starting this whole first company. And I went into my OB and I told her, I said, I really need to schedule an induction. And she was like, why? And I said, well, because I've started this company and I need to go to market. And she was like, you're 36 weeks pregnant. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I'm either taking a 4-week-old or I'm taking a 2-week-old to market. So which do you want me to do? Because I'm doing it. And so she let me schedule an induction and I ended up having to have a C-section because I was not ready to have the baby, but it worked out okay. I strapped it, took it to market. It was my son. And that's where Nordstrom placed their first order. So we really, So, and then it kind of grew from there.
I just have to jump in, right? As soon as I heard her story, I'm like, you have to come on the podcast because
you're so much tougher than the rest of us.
Right. Because everyone on Twitter is like, I'm grinding, I'm hustling, I'm in my grind set. I'm like, bullshit. Like
on their laptop in Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly. Pregnant, driving to Mexico, placing an orders, door-to-door sales, literally door-to-door sales, then taking a baby to her first trade show. I mean, it makes me...
You, Sean, it turns out that was my first very important lesson in marketing because it turns out a pregnant or new mom selling diaper bags is a really good marketing scheme.
It was like real life UGC. That's what that is.
Yeah.
That's
before UGC even existed. It was literally before it existed. So, over the next couple of years, we grew into probably about 2,000 stores, not including Nordstrom's expansion, and we worked with Bye Baby too. So we did mass merchant. And brick and mortar, but really focused on brick and mortar. At that time, our product was really focused around baby bedding and diaper bags. So our average purchase was, at retail was $400, which I'm like drooling over now in, the direct to consumer world. I'm like, God damn, how do I get it back up to that? We're lucky if we're, in the just under 100. So, but it grew. We did celebrity nurseries. We had our press and PR back then was about being in these weekly magazines. We did like Tori Spelling's nursery and we were on her reality show and we did really cool things that helped with branding, in the long run. And then, we grew and 2008 came and 2009 came and half of our stores closed overnight.
Whoa.
And it's funny, like people in this industry used to talk about 2008, 2009, the way that now we all talk about iOS and how it affected the cost of marketing, right? Well, I mean, it was even more drastic. I mean, as much as all of our costs of advertising and our CACs went up and it really affected the way that we do business, it was, the difference was this was really pre-websites. I mean, we worked with drop shipping on websites. And so we had, Buy Baby drop shipped our products, but not near at the volume that we see with online purchasing now. And so, yeah, half of our stores closed, and we were still going to market. It's when our company really pivoted from these expensive products to more giftable apparel. But I knew that I didn't want to be seasonal apparel. And I've listened to you guys talk about seasonal apparel, seasonal products in general. And I haven't had enough experience in retail to know that that is the hardest thing to do. What you really want is a product that sells at 365 days of the year, and then on Black Friday, it kills it. But you don't want a product that has seasonality where maybe for a whole third and fourth quarter, it's not selling. And so we shifted and we started bringing in more gifty products because the stores that did survive 08 and 09 were selling lower price point products. I mean, it was a recession, right? And so we kind of did that for a couple of years. This is when brands really started to touch on direct to consumer. And we added our first website, but it did not have a shopping cart. And it was like, yeah, I know you could have a website that didn't have.
Exploded.
What do you mean? Y'all have no idea. When I think about it, like back in the day, I'm like, God, where were, you couldn't even, we were just learning about it. I have to tell you, I left out this part. So I have a second company, and it's a brick and mortar store, just a single brick and mortar store in Texas. And it's a baby store. And the reason that I opened it and my first touch with e-commerce was when we were doing these celebrity nurseries, and the People magazines and the Us Weeklies and all the press would have to credit a store because people wanted to know where to buy it. And we would immediately see a lift in that product from whatever store we had to pick. And so we were, trying to negotiate even with our accounts, like, okay, Nordstrom, if we send it to you, then, we want you to bring in these SKUs for the next purchase order because we knew it had that kind of appeal. And eventually I was like, why am I not pushing this press and this, these people to my own website? So I created Nursery Couture, so that when we were getting press, we could send it to my other company, and I wasn't upsetting my accounts because they didn't know that it was related to us. And, a big thing back then, guys, is if you were wholesale and you were adding shopping carts to your website, retailers were pissed.
Oh, yeah.
They did not want you competing with them. They did not want you. I mean, map pricing was a thing. They were afraid you were going to discount if they had products still on their shelf, but you were trying to clear out inventory. There was a lot of risk involved. And it's why we didn't have a shopping cart with our first website. And that was probably like in 10, 11. And then Big Commerce kind of started to come around, and we switched over to Big Commerce. And that's when we added a cart. So we were still primarily wholesale, but just from natural, organic search, right? People were coming to our website, and we'd do like $2,000 in a day. And I was like, God, that's like free. And think about our margins, right? They were spending $500, and I had built in these incredible margins because we were having to wholesale to these mass march. I mean, it was a moment. And we did that for about a year. And that's really when we made the big decision of, is this an opportunity that we're not grabbing onto? Shopify was really coming about. This was like 2015, 2016. And I hired a girl that I actually took from an analytics company. And I've heard y'all talk about this too, but I'm not a believer in agencies. We keep everything in house. I don't want to pay full price for somebody spending 5 minutes on my company, when I can bring them in and they can spend 8 hours on it a day. But I didn't know what I was doing. I knew nothing about e-commerce, and I knew that I needed to figure it out. So we hired this local analytics company. I started sitting through the meetings. and really just thinking these guys were idiots and I was paying for something that was very simple. And so there was a girl that was our account representative, and I asked her if she wanted to come work for us, and she did. And she was the one that kind of helped me set up the Shopify store. We created all of the graphics for our shop. We created all the copy, all the content, all the products listings. It took us about 3 months. And it was in October, November, December. December 31st, we sent out an email to all of our wholesalers and said that we were no longer doing wholesale. And we launched our Shopify store January 1st. But a big thing to note, so we had this big commerce shop, right, for like 2 years, not driving big revenue. I mean, under $1 million total, but not spending $1 in advertising. So nice padded margins on it. And the traffic that we were pushing towards it was just like old school SEO and analytics, like alt tags and, link building and blogging and like all the crazy stuff people used to do. And when we switched from our big commerce site to our Shopify store, I learned about redirects and how important they were in link building. So we lost 50% of our traffic overnight. And which is like, y'all talk about, and I know people listening, because this is right. It's a lot of like people in business, right, that are listening to your podcast and running companies like this.
Oh, yeah.
Traffic is, I can tell you at any point in the day on my website, I can look at traffic at 10 a.m. in the morning, and I can tell you what my total revenue will be that day, just based off of what the traffic is, with a gut instinct, not taking into consideration conversion rate and all the stuff. So our traffic, we launched Shopify site, and our traffic cut in half overnight. And we spent probably 3 months trying to figure out what the hell was wrong. And it was just simply Google re-indexing us, like all the technical stuff, right? That like somebody could probably tell us more about that we don't know. And
it's interesting how you were so SEO based, right?
Yeah.
So you weren't running paid ads.
None.
Right.
Well,
so it makes complete sense. Like that's what happened. And
I know.
People talk about SEO a lot still.
I did
it. People are still hanging on to SEO as this big deal, and it still is, but it's kind of different when you have a brand, and it's kind of different when you're able to really run paid ads. I think SEO to me still feels like a relic of the pre-paid ads days, or it's very useful for like if you're selling diaper bags and someone's looking for diaper bags, sure. But when you're big enough and have a real brand, it's like, is that really the way you're capturing people, or is it really paid ads? Are you doing paid ads now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This was 2015, 2016, right?
Okay.
So this was before anybody really knew how to make Facebook really work. Everyone was just throwing up static images and driving sales. But I just want to talk about how crazy it is and like how much guts it takes to pull off what you pull off, right? One, it's like amazing to, launch the business while you're pregnant and go to the trade shows. But you have an awesome wholesale business this whole time. You're getting celebrity placements, and then post the financial collapse, just email everybody, I'm not going to sell to you anymore. Bye. Like, that's so insane.
You ghosted your wholesale business. It was just like, we'll see ya.
Well, I turned out I'm pretty good at just saying no, goodbye, and changing things up a bit. Yeah, really what it came down to that really influenced my decision was I was so fresh. We would create these products, and we had our first like apparel line before we completely cut off wholesale. And I'd go to market, and these buyers for these retailers that it could be anything from the store owner to just an intern to anybody would come in, and they would pick what they liked to put into the stores. And knowing my customer so well, and also having this store at home, I would try to say, well, no, this is how you should merchandise it, or this is what I feel like the moms are asking for, or, I was my target audience at this time. And I have 3 kids now. So throughout those years, I was pregnant multiple times at market, convincing these buyers to buy baby products. What I really recognized is that I wasn't able to talk to the end consumer, and there was too many parties involved. And I felt like if I could just have a conversation with the pregnant mom and tell her how important this, swaddle was, or this nightgown, or the diaper bag, and help her understand, and learn, and really ultimately make her life easier, then I was going to win. But I was having to go through middlemen, right? And I wasn't there. Like, unless I was doing a trunk show at Nordstrom, I didn't have that capability. I had all my eggs in somebody else's basket.
The mid-2000s too is like when retail lost its art. So you probably were experiencing some of that. Like, I remember the early 2000s, and like what was happening, and like from then until today, buyers are not buyers anymore. They're spreadsheet people now at retail. Like, it's you no longer have the category buyer who like really cared about the category and was in the job for a long time. By the time you experienced that, like I remember my first company, like acutely seeing this happen at retail, multi-brand retail, where like the buyers just stopped giving a shit. And it was like, I want the pink one because my data says I should buy the pink one. Yeah. And I didn't even talk to the brand to figure out, like, is that actually what the customer cares about?
Or they would say, I want the peak one, but I want it in 6 months.
Right.
And speed to market doesn't exist when you're having to work on calendars like that. Whereas I can come up with a product tonight and have it on my website within 10 days, right? I can have it from my factory in 30 days. And that speed to market does not happen in the old school way of doing retail. No. Although I don't think people like to ask that question a lot, and I don't think brick and mortar is going away. I think the experience of shopping in person, even for all of y'all's brands, is still a very valuable experience in branding.
No, for sure. There's no discounting the value of retail. I think I'm best. The nuance in some of this is also like, in your category, there's a fashion element to this, right? And style. And I think that in my old company, used to deal with a lot with fashion brands. And that was like a common thing when they sold apparel. Yeah. It was just like, they could never get the full line into a retailer. It was always like 2 pieces out of 30.
Then you get it into the retailer. And like, I would go, if I traveled, I'd go into a baby store to, to kind of just see it. And I would like merchandise the shelf for them, Yep. And we get to merchandise our own websites the way that we feel like best shows off the product.
You still don't do any wholesale?
No.
Wow.
None.
So
we only sell on our website.
And I just want to say, you are the face of D2C, right? Like, I love Nick Sharma, he has that monocle, but like all of those Forbes articles about Warby Parker or whatever should really be about you, because you did exactly what D2C is supposed to be. You got sick of not talking to your consumer. You knew what they wanted. You wanted to build that relationship. And now you've built this 9-figure business because of that. And it's like, this is the story you don't hear. Like, for some reasons we talk about Allbirds, but like,
because we're working.
Yeah. There's no press. Yeah.
No press. I love it. One of you guys I don't know which one it said, but one of y'all said something about y'all are the best. Your brand is the biggest unknown brand, and thanks to your PR agency or something. Because I don't know who said that, but
That's
it was
me.
something.
That would be
I use
Jason.
that one all the time.
I literally laughed out loud, like at my desk listening to y'all. And I was like, God damn, that's so freaking true. So yeah, it's true. Katy, I mean, it's,
do you still do like, so you built your brand early on like clever PR. Do you still use that lever like as now a purely D2C business, or is that just not important anymore because like there's other mechanisms to get to get it out?
We don't do PR like that any longer. Now, I mean, even, we didn't even do influencers until a year ago. A really interesting part, I think, of our story and how we go. Yeah, we grew. I mean, I could blow y'all's mind 1,000 times just because I've learned so much about the direct to consumer business in the last 2 or 3 years, but we grew to 30 million in revenue. And I was the only executive. The only person under me was people packing and shipping orders. Yeah, right? Now we have...
Yeah. Wow.
But what that does, and so we keep it, I mean, I kind of touched on it a little bit, but we're not, and I'm not your typical CEO and founder. I think, I'm truly at heart an entrepreneur. I love business. Like, if you're not making money doing this and loving every moment of it, figure out something else to do. I tell my kids every day, I'm like, figure out what you love to do and then figure out a way to make money doing it. And if you can do that the rest of your life, like it's, and then also find like what you like to drink and if you like to travel, and it's nice to have a lake house, right? But we grew. So when we started scaling our Shopify store, we didn't pay for advertising at all in the first year. So we had to we did go back to PR and old school SEO to hit that first million in 2016. And that girl, her name was Kristen, and she was wonderful, told me about Facebook ads. And I wasn't on Facebook at the time. And she was like, I really think that we should advertise on Facebook. And I'm like, no, it's social media. And this was 2016. And I was like, there's no, it's just, we need to focus on link building, and we need to reach out to these bloggers, and we need to do more celebrity nurseries because this is what helped us grow all the years. And she was like, let's just try it. So I remember spending $100 a day on Facebook, and then $500 a day on Facebook. And then, the crazy part about marketing online is you have to spend the money before you see the revenue. It's not like a normal sales job where you go out and you write the order and you're like, okay, Target's placing this order for, $1 million, and then you feel good about it. You're spending $1 million before you even see it convert into a sale. And so we would spend $500, and then the next day, our sales would be $4,000. And I'm like, okay, this is feeling good. So we doubled and tripled over the next 3 years with 5 employees. And then COVID came along. So when COVID came, we were at probably just under 10 million in revenue. And we're in Texas. And so, I remember standing there with my 5 employees, and we kind of looked at each other and we were like, well, we're either essential or we're not. We're going to work. And because, we were all thinking about, well, how are we going to drive our cars and sneak in to ship orders? We were shipping out of our offices. We actually had 5,000 square feet of office space above my retail store. That we were doing 10 million in revenue out of. And I had just started plans for the building that we're in now, which is 10,000 square feet. And I'm actually building a 50,000 square foot building right now that we will move into next year. So we own every single aspect and process of our company, including fulfillment. And I have done 3PL. I did it when we were wholesale. We had to because we sold to Buy Baby, Amazon, Target, all the things, right? And so COVID came, and what it did, and I don't think y'all have actually talked a whole lot about how COVID really affected a lot of these D2C
No, we haven't.
brands.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It really was a slingshot for a lot of people. And now some brands, like in the, home, like mattresses, right? Or I don't know, just different, anything that became such an essential product during COVID. And I think there was some fear coming out of COVID for brands of like, hey, was that a one-time thing? Or did I really create a brand and a product that can last longer than that? We went through a sale process 2 years ago, and that was every single PE's favorite question to ask us. Is your success based off of COVID?
Sure.
And I was like, no, I've been doing this a long time before COVID. What COVID did for us is we kept thinking, and me especially, and you guys with your own businesses do the same thing. Like, I'm just waiting for the bottom to fall out any day, because business is such a roller coaster, right? That when it's really good, you can't even enjoy it because you're anticipating the break. And then when you're in the bottom, you're just working so hard to get back up top. It's just this like roller coaster of emotion. And I think all entrepreneurs out there and just people in business in general can probably appreciate that statement, right?
So here's what happened with COVID. Okay. Good businesses who drove sales, drove customer acquisition, built a brand, with a good product, they're still crushing it.
Yeah.
Everyone on this podcast, there was a COVID bump for many because fundamentally they didn't have a great product, but there was a timing component to life, or they just got out over their skis operationally, and that sort of like all of a sudden, well, we're sitting on all this inventory now, and no one wants it anymore. We're overextended and we're screwed, right?
I mean, you're seeing that with Instant Pot.
Super interesting.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Jason,
super interesting that,
right.
That same question, the two questions that I hear the most. I'm a former banker, so I talk to PE firms all the time, and I'm always happy because, it's sort of fun going back to that world. And the two questions that I get are, what about COVID? What about the COVID bump? And I'm like, well, we're growing faster, and we grew faster in 2022 than we did in 21. But and then the other one is, who are you taking share from? And this is one that goes back to Sean. This is, good products increase TAM. Good products create their own TAM. And it seems like that's another thing that you did, is you sort of increase the TAM in this space.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to say is, we talked about it with Instapot, right? They pulled demand forward. Like if COVID didn't happen from 2020 to 2025, X number of, air fryers would have been sold. That same number was sold just in 2 years, right? Yep. Now, 3 years out, nobody wants fucking air fryers because everyone who wanted one bought one. But I know way more pregnant people right now. I have 4 pregnant people in my life, right? So the demand is still going to be there, right? And, the COVID bump was real for a lot of people, but it seems that the best brands are continuing to create that TAM, right? And I think there's going to be a lot more kids for years to come. So I think you're fine.
I think it's category dependent too. Like, I actually would say that, Katy, you're going to benefit more post-COVID just because so many people are at home making babies. And
Matt, were you making babies? Matt, did you make a COVID baby?
Look at my face. Does it look like I'm still making
I can't believe Sean did a COVID courthouse marriage. I saw that.
I got a dog in COVID. I was one of those jackasses.
I think Katy, I mean, a lot of baby brands are down this year, right? Or down last year, right? But the big difference is the one word I would use to describe you is tenacious. Like, very few people have the tenacity you do, right? And it's either insanity or conviction or something. Just the ability to just make calls and run. Probably,
yeah.
I trust Northbeam because I know the rigor of their analytics. Like, they don't compromise. They don't cut corners. And having come from a finance background and being a numbers guy, I know that all models are wrong, but theirs is going to be the least wrong because of that level of rigor. It's like there's a trust when you're dealing with something with a model, the math behind it, the rigor. There's like a million shortcuts that can be taken. I know them for a long time, and that's why I trust that they're putting the level of analytics. It's like Hexclad releasing a new product. We're just not going to do it unless it's great, unless it's innovative, unless it's special. And that's the approach over at Northbeam. So that's why we really, really trust the platform.
You are wasting a fuck ton of money by not using Northbeam. That's my totally unbiased opinion about this, is that, we'll spend $1 million on Twitter this quarter. I only feel comfortable doing that because of what Northbeam tells me, right? I can apples to apples compare inside of Northbeam, a Twitter click versus a Facebook click, right? I can see the value, how it changes over 5 days, 7 days. We look at 1 day click. That's kind of like our whole thing. But because other people look in platform, like, of course, Facebook's going to fucking tell you it's the best driver of traffic, and so is Google, and so is everybody else, right? So you need a source of truth for your business.
Yeah. When I look back at what COVID did, it gave me a little bit more of a fuck it attitude, because I kept thinking everything's going to shut down. We need to go, push the pedal right to the ground on this company, because we were, day after day, you guys, just barely, we were holding back ad spend because we couldn't catch our breath, right? I could have really ripped the Band-Aid off, but I don't really think that that's the best way to do it either. The way you have a business for 18 years is you're strategic and you make good business decisions. And sometimes overnight successes don't get that, that wealth of knowledge or experience to go back and go, well, what if, and so I hold back on growth because I want to make sure that it is an appropriate amount of risk and just belief, right? And so when COVID came, I just said, well, fuck it. Let's double our ad spend. And we did, day after day after day, because we kept operating like they're going to shut us down. They're going to tell us we can't come to work. They're going to tell us, and then we had Lysol cans spraying our boxes that were coming from China because we thought COVID was on it. Yeah. It's like, it was just an insane experience that really, looking back, is incredible. But so we grew like crazy that year, moved into our building that at the time, so I built my first building during COVID, grew my business, and we moved in the week before Black Friday, which was also insane. And then added on to that building a year later. So we've been in this building for 2 years, and now we're going into our 50,000 square foot building. There's so much. You don't have a long enough podcast. Like, I'm like, get me in why am I not in y'all's chat thing? This is the thing. I don't have any kind. So our whole experience, we're in San Antonio, Texas. We are one of 2 e-commerce brands in my city. Every person I have hired has zero experience with e-commerce because there is no, but I don't have to worry about losing them either, because I'm like, well, where are they going to go? They have to move. There's no other brands that are doing e-commerce in my city. But the cool story, y'all want to hear the story about the PE, because it is pretty interesting.
I do. I just want to say, we're going to add you to chat.
You better
not. We have to convince Todd. Todd is a great guy, but he is incredibly defensive. So if we can't add you to this one, we'll add you to a new one.
Why is Sean just start another one? And it'll be easier.
Yeah. Look, Todd's great. He does $1 billion a year, maybe $1 billion, maybe less, maybe more. But the guy does not like new friends. So
I don't think so.
Right.
No. Well, anyways, it's been an experience, and truly, like, I didn't have any kind of sounding board growing this business. Mine were, I have really great advisors. And any founder or CEO or, COO, CMO, all of them, have this kind of group of people they go to for advice. But just in the last year, really, have I started to reach out to other brands, and I'm like, oh my God, these are my people. Like, how did you could have had these like cheat sheets. And when, the story so 2 years ago, I walked away from $100 million valuation 10 days before close. I went through the entire process, guys.
Oh,
yep. So, and it was,
your bankers must have loved that.
Yeah. That's what the first thing everyone says. I tell you, I really enjoyed my bankers. And I'm still very close with them. And I gave them a lot of heartburn because I think it doesn't usually work that way, but it was probably the most valuable lesson I've ever had in business, because going into it, so we grew to 30 million in revenue, and I understood KPIs, but not the way that I look at the world of business now and today. So what we really were focusing on was ROAS and conversion rate, because that's the 2 most important aspects, right? And EBITDA. Like I said at the beginning, if I'm running a business, it's going to be profitable. And we run still to this day extremely lean. I'm a big believer. Our CMO is remote, but most of my staff is in office. We get things done faster that way.
Mm-hmm.
We just
don't tell Sean that. Sean,
I'll argue till the day I die. I'm telling you, I've got both. We have both remote and in person. And And even now when we're hiring, a lot of people relocate because the ones that were remote, I've found, really miss the, at a certain level, they miss the collaboration with their, team members, I guess. But what had happened, and I think this is interesting for anybody listening that's considering PE or selling, because it's always in the back of your mind as a founder. You're like, I'm going to create this business and I'm going to sell it. And when I did it, my goal, and what I used to tell my ex-husband was, I was like, well, when I get to $10 million, we're going to sell it. And that was my goal. But I hit it. And then I was like, well, now it's going to be 20 million. And then I hit that. And then I raised the bar again. Right. And then in those years, 16, 17, 18, it was so much chaos and so much fun that I didn't stop to think about what I was really building. And I was at a dinner party in Austin, actually, with some people that were from New York and just Austin, a handful of e-commerce. And I heard this one guy talking to my then boyfriend about what he does. He owned a women's jewelry company. He was a partner in it. And so my husband, who is in construction and knows, he doesn't even know what a conversion rate is, was trying to say website stuff to him. And he said, oh, well, my girlfriend has a baby product company that's online too, a website. And so I walked over and I met him and he was like, oh, you do baby products. That's cute. And I was like, that sucks. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's real cute. So he was talking about Facebook ads. He was very proud of his business. And we continued as we were talking. I think he started to realize that I knew more about what I was talking about. And he said, well, we do $10,000 a day in Facebook ads. And I said, well, we do $10,000 a day by 10 a.m. And I said, but that's cute. And he smiled. And I make fun of it because it was one of those moments, right, where you're like, look, asshole, I know what I'm talking about. Back up. Just because it's baby products doesn't mean it's not a legit company, but what he did, so he had gone through several sales of his companies, and he said, he started asking me questions like, what's your EBITDA? What are your margins? What's your COGS? And I was just rambling him off. And he said, do you know what your company is worth? And I was like, no. And he said a number, and he said it even lower than what we ended up getting LOIs for. But I just stopped in that moment and I went home and thought about it. And the next morning I was like, wow, I really hit this. And I think founders and business owners have that moment where you're like, oh my God, this is that chance. This is what I've been working for, right? This is what I've been working so hard for so long. And so I started the process of interviewing bankers and figuring out what I was going to do. Settled on a more boutique agency just because I felt like they were more dedicated. And I really like the guy. They were from New York. And we started the process in March of 2021. And I walked away from it basically December 31st of 2021. So it was a long process. We went through management meetings. We went through financial audits. We went through every single aspect of it. And what I learned, guys, and for people listening really, is that private equity, there's two big players, right? There's private equity and there's strategic. And if you had women's beauty, you hit a gold mine because there's these huge strategic players that were buying up all these brands. But in my industry, there is no strategic, especially now that Bye Bye Baby's gone. There is no strategic in my industry. And so that really wasn't an option. And so then it became about private equity, and I had to learn about what PE was about. And I sat in these interviews and I asked the questions. I'm like, but what are you going to do? What are you bringing to the table? And they would, right. And they would say, well, we think that you should go into international expansion. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm already doing that. Yeah, I know that too. And then they say, well, we think you need to do X, Y, Z. And I'd be like, well, yeah, but I told you that's what I'm doing. What else? And I needed to build out our C-suite. We did not have one. They would go through the audit, what's the revenue or I don't even know what the one thing was, but they say, well, can we talk to your CFO or your controller about, X, Y, Z? And I'd be like, yeah, hold on, let me put her on the phone. And then I'd be like, it's me. What do you want to know? As an operator, you are prideful of wearing so many hats, right? Because you know all the aspects. It's not what they want to hear. They want to know, right? And as a founder, they want to know that if you step away, your business is going to continue to grow and operate the way that it does. And that was probably the most valuable lesson I learned through that entire process. And what it has allowed me to do is hire the right people and put them in place so that now I get to focus on the things I love even more, which is the product development and the marketing and stuff. So
isn't that nice though, when you can build a team that you can rely on and then you can focus on the strategic aspects? I know that Sean has that. Matt has a good partner. And we've been building that out as well on our side. And it's hard giving up control of everything. How much have you delegated since that PE process, would you think, from what percentage have you given
I've delegated
away?
a lot. It doesn't feel like it. Somehow my days are still jam-packed with things. But it's actually, I've been extremely blessed with the people that have come into my life and the way that they have. My CFO, I actually hired her. She was pregnant when I hired her, which, your HR departments would be like, hey, be careful. But I knew when I met her that she was a badass and a really good fit for us. And my CMO, I met through a friend that was doing media buying and introduced me to him, that he was looking to change spots. I mean, it was just like luck of fate kind of interactions, right? And I've trusted them enough. That's the hard part, is letting go of control and then also trusting them to make the decisions on the behalf of your company or your baby, because this ultimately is like another child of mine, right? Like I've grown it into this thing and I'm responsible for all these people's lives. It's, if we have a great month or a bad month, the last person to get paid is usually the founder or the CEOs. I mean, you can't just get rid of people, and it's a lot lot of responsibility.
Unless you're Meta or Google or Klaviyo.
different rules.
Just cut people that you hired and gave jobs and convinced them to work for you. But another thing that you just really interesting, and this is one of the reasons why we were so excited to have you on, and Sean's been talking about this for a while, is that the way you killed retail, the way you just shut it down and went all in D2C. And I didn't realize what an incredible D2C success story this is. There really aren't that many incredible D2C success stories. Like, now that the dust has settled on COVID, you look at the public markets. I mean, there are just the pure play D2C success story is really, there aren't that many. And it's funny now that a lot of these D2C brands are pushing into retail, and some should, depending on their unit economics. Others are trying to solve the problem of a high CAC in D2C, and they're not going to solve it by giving away 40 to 60% if the take.
No, they need to focus on their LTV.
Yeah.
Right. CAC, I mean, I agree with you. I've seen a lot of big brands. They're trying to diversify. We've kind of hit the ceiling a little bit, right? And you have to look at your brand and say, well, what else? And I think this is where just brand value is so important in product, because we can come to market we launched Swim this year. Having zero experience with Swim, we've always been a newborn customer. Even the first 4 years of D2C, we've always been first purchase profitable. That's been my ultimate goal. And going through that PE process, I never even knew what an LTV was, to be perfectly honest. I just was so happy that we were making so much money off the first purchase. And then I was handing off my customer to my competition, literally. And so we shifted and we scaled and we brought in bigger sizes and pajamas and Swim. And I think that because we put so much focus on that experience, right, and the brand, you can come out with rings, right, Sean, with wallets, or and the customers, they trust you a little bit more. So I don't think necessarily that the future of retail is going backwards. I think it's just taking into consideration what your customers, trust you to provide for them. And I've got that can be a whole nother conversation of what we think the future of e-commerce is. We're about to have a huge shift.
Isn't it awesome how much better she is at her job than all of us?
Like, so much.
Like the 18 years, the guts. And the one last question I have is like, what are you gunning for? Right? Like you had the $100 million offer. Like you've been in retail, you've been in D2C, you have executives now, you're launching Swim. Yeah. Like are you going to be the strategic in the category? Are you going to replace the buy? What is it? Bye baby. What the fuck was it called?
I would. Yes. I mean, to answer your question, absolutely. If there's not a strategic out there big enough that, wants to acquire us, then I'll become that person and I'll do it the way I want to do it. I don't believe in that corporate structure is the way that all businesses have to be ran. I think that there's other ways to run extremely successful businesses. And you guys are probably do that too. I think the creative thinking of it and doing it differently creates that moat, right? And it separates you from everybody. So yeah, I think I don't know what the future is. And I don't know if we would, if there's a company, some huge strategic out there, it's like, oh my God, I need that brand. Maybe, right? It's the same way that I checked the boxes when I cut wholesale off and went direct to consumer. I don't know what the future holds, but as long as I'm having fun and killing it and making a difference, then like, hell
you're
yeah.
going forever. You're building a business. You're going forever. Those are the best businesses. No question.
I would bet on you. So if you ever want to do a secondary friends and family round, or if you want me to call IKEA, when you hear
well, when we need it, we'll ask for it. But right now, I'm really doing 100% control.
Yeah, but just when you hear 18 years for a brand, it's like 18 years is going to be 180 years, right? Like that's the European style of thinking that like American businesses lack. Like you're willing to go to zero if you have to. You're willing to hire or fire if you have to. And that's not what public companies do on a quarterly earnings basis. You're like, I'm doing what's best right now in the moment. And that's something I'd bet on for, decades if I could.
Yeah.
So.
There's an element of like the Katy, I just like it. It's just admirable where like you have this high degree of like short-term impatience, but yet somehow long-term patience. Like it's wild that you've been able to like, maintain this, like right now I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes to make this work without a view of a finish line. And just to say like, I've been at this 18 years and I'm going to keep going. Like patience is just so underrated as a variable, like an ingredient of success.
And resilience.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Well, I mean, like you can't have one without the other. You can't be patient.
No, and I think you have to be willing to pivot at any moment. Yeah. And change is fun. So
all right, Jason. lay some wisdom on Katy, like this dude, she set the tone. So this has got to be a good one. Don't fuck it up.
I know. It's getting hard. What are we, episode 10 now?
Pressure, man.
Right, Jason, do the intro actually. Run us in episode 10, Panzerism number
episode
10.
10. We're kicking this off with a Panzerism. So, and it's kind of, this one is more of a career development hack more so than it is like a business building hack. A lot of our stuff has been around that, but I just see this all the time and I had to get it out there. Like, guys, people, do not vent on social media, please. It's not a good look, and it really has no upside. So just cut it out. I keep seeing this. It's like people need to harden up, stop venting. Like, call a friend, call your mom, call your dad, call your sibling, text someone, but like, don't put it out there on social media. And I made this mistake a few weeks ago, but like I was told that a vendor hadn't responded, a potential vendor hadn't responded after a number of attempts by our team. And guess what? I was wrong. They had responded. I'm an idiot for tweeting about it. And I should have done my homework first. It was like the person who told me about it, like, just missed it. And seriously, like, don't post negative shit unless it's really going to make people laugh. Like, then it's the only time to do it is like, if you want to be funny, do it. But like, if I see your tweets and you're complaining about your job and your clients and your life, and guess what? I'm not hiring you. You're not getting hired. And, you know, we all run large brands, and you know what sucks? When people post negative shit about your product or your company, most of the time these people are fucking wrong. Like there's this Reddit post today. There was a Reddit post today. And it's like, Reddit is like a cesspool. I mean, it's amazing. Reddit's amazing, but it's also fucking crazy. And someone posted something really negative on Reddit about our brand, and it's just like totally wrong. And you know, you go out and you do that. Like you got to resist the urge. The urge is powerful. You know, you want attention, you want a dopamine hit. But you know what's really good and really hard? It's like, post positive things. Negativity comes easy. Fight it, and you'll be better for it. Unless you're going to be really funny. But
Sean can do it because Sean's hilarious.
Unless you're going to be funny, you know. And then Sean's posts really aren't negative; they're just fucking funny.
No, they're not.
You know,
that's not. You're right. That's not fair. But Sean is funny, and that's the goal. Can I give you a story on this one? The negative. Yeah. So I do obviously I agree. So when we launched Lomi, we caught so much fire so fast that this fucking YouTuber, I won't even name him because I hate this guy so much. He figured out that there was like so much YouTube search volume for our brand, right? That he did this massive teardown, like take us down video. And his whole channel is like, he's a professional troll.
He's probably done us too.
Dude, he's done everybody. Like his most popular video ever was like how feminism is the worst thing on the planet. And like, or like Elon Musk is a complete scammer. So like we had this teardown video. He posts this thing and he's got a massive channel. It's like 1 million followers, right? It's like, he's basically like, I don't know what you call it. Like it's a type of porn. And we were in process of our Series B when this fucking thing hit. And it got like 600,000 or 700,000 views. Cause dude, we were spending like 50 to 100 grand a day on YouTube. Like our brand was getting search volume. One of our potential investors actually pulled out of the deal because of this video. They believed what this guy said. This guy was like, this thing is a scam. You know, it uses electricity. Why the fuck do you want to buy something that plugs in? My response to the guy was like, I don't know. Do you wash your laundry by hand? Like, I feel like plugging shit in is kind of what we do as a society. So so here's the positive. Like his video basically spawned some of our best marketing. Cause like we started thinking like all of his critiques, we need answers to. Right. And ultimately that video, all it did was it kept an investor who got spooked off my cap table.
Yeah.
And
that was probably the best thing that ever happened to you.
Right. Probably the best thing.
Great engagement too on it. So that was good.
Yeah. So, you know, some of our best ads have come out of that shithead. And so Jason, I feel you like, and we still get this, like, I still get these like trolls that like to take us down, and I'm with you. I'm like, I don't actually understand what the point of it is. I don't get why, like, the internet is not your pillow. Get a fucking pillow and scream into it if you need something.
Well, look, you know, it's a human response, and it comes from in nature. If something bad happens to you, you can die. If something good happens to you, you just continue to live, right? And dying is way worse than continuing to live, right? So negative feedback, negative critiques, negative feelings stick around and hurt way, way, way more. And you know, my wife's an influencer, right? She opens up Lululemon bags and she wears them, and, you know, or like she'll review cooking stuff, whatever she does, and nothing but positivity. Like we're talking like, you know, 50 comments, and girls are great at ramping each other up, right? Being like, love this, you look beautiful. One negative thing, and she's like bummed about it, right? And it's like, it's so human nature just to go straight to negativity.
There's such an element to put what you want back.
It is. It's much easier. It's just much easier to tweet negative shit. It just is. Like, that's the point. And that's why, I don't know. I feel like I tweet a lot less than certain people because I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to engage in it. But it's such a bad look when you've got these e-com folks, growth people, 25 to 32, and they're just like talking about how hard their life is and how hard their day is. Like, I don't know how anyone would want to hire any of these people, but
I'm just going to respond
like
now
not a
with
good
this
look.
episode and tell them, why don't you listen to Katy's story and tell me how fucking hard your life is?
Oh yeah, I mean, dude. I mean, basically, nobody in our industry has the guts Katy has, right? So,
well, I think better if we called it balls, but I'll take guts too.
she definitely has the balls too. But yeah, like the negativity. Look, I've been negative. I'm really trying in the past couple of months to just have pure positivity, because there's only positive outcomes out of positivity. It's a good Panzerism, Jason. Next time I hear you complain, I'm just going to send this clip to you. So there you go.
This is good, Jason. Careful, man. This stuff comes back, dude.
Whatever you put out,
coming back to you.
All right.
So we've got. I do want to finish. Sean, I know you're in the notes. You've got this deep end topic that you want to dig into. Are we ready to do that? Because I think it's interesting, and I almost don't know what you're talking about. so maybe start with that, like where this came from.
This comes from a podcast I was thinking of. So, or I listened to. So Logan Bartlett, shout him out. He has the best podcast. His podcast is better than our podcast. If you're listening to this,
dude,
please
all podcasts are better than our podcast. We had an agenda 2 hours ago.
But so Logan Bartlett, I think he's he's an investor over at Red Points or something. I don't even know where he works, but he gets on like the best guests, right? And like 500 people listen to it. So he had the founder of Twitch on, right? And the founder of Twitch, super smart guy. And he was the CEO after the Amazon acquisition for like 5 years or whatever. But he was talking about how tech companies shouldn't be remote. Right. He was talking about how Silicon Valley, like the beauty of it is, if you think about Google, it's a campus of smart people running around like hippies, working on whatever projects they want to work on. Right. The best things to come out of Google, like Gmail or whatever, are things that like were just randomly thought up in people's free time, and they found a team and they delivered it. And he's like, that is how tech companies need to work. That is how innovation happens, is this people in person, not why are they paid so much? So like, they don't have to worry about money. They don't have to worry about anything. They can just be creative. And he's like, the other type of companies, the type of companies that can be remote, are the military. He's like, they have systems, they have processes, they have chains of command, and everything is documented. And you do not go outside of the lines of the military. There is no innovation in the military. It's like you are an E1, you are a grunt, then you're promoted to E2, then you're promoted to E3. And if you want to be, an officer, you go to officer training school, and then you work up the ranks there. And it's just something I've been thinking of is, we obviously have a lot of friends who run in-person companies. We have some friends who run remote companies. And when I think about Ridge being successful, remotely, it's because we are structured like the military, right? Like, I get daily recaps, I get weekly recaps, and everyone knows who their bosses are and who they roll up to, and everyone has an assistant, and like, that's the way that works. So that was just a really interesting thought that I think should be discussed more. And do e-commerce companies need that innovation? Like, do they need the Google-esque campuses, people running around, thinking and dreaming every day? Or are they better off being more like a special forces unit? So just want to talk about that.
I don't think anybody needs the opulence of these campuses. Like I would erase that from the conversation. But I do think there's like real value in like creative density. Right. So like entrepreneurial density, and like having really smart people, creative people occupy the same space regularly is going to result in it's just going to result in great thinking. And I think that most e-commerce, I guess like most physical goods, like consumer businesses, probably, Sean, should run a lot more like you. And then I think there's a small subset of them where the the energy source for the brand is actually creativity. Not in like the marketing, but like in actually the product. And I do believe that, and Katie, you might fall into that pile. Like, I do believe that the proximity of all that muscle matters in those
point about the campuses and like, you know, having a really nice workspace. I think the first ones to do that that I saw was Bloomberg back, you know, many years ago.
That's true.
I remember when Bloomberg built this office in like the 60th Street next to Bloomingdale's in New York, and their office was just like sick, right? And then I was in investment banking, and there are a lot of companies, you know, they bring in lunch. There's a lot of food in there. It's all to get people to work harder. It's all to get people to stay in the office longer, work harder, and people thought it worked. You know, I don't know how hard people are working at Ridge. I don't know how hard the remote people at Hexclad are working. You know, you've got Slack. There's lots of ways to do it. I mean, you can sort of tell who's working hard, but like, would they be working harder? I think that's really what it's all about. It's about getting the output, and those nice offices were a way to do it. But a lot of that trend happened before Slack and before Zoom and everything else. So there's just been such a seismic shift in everything. I think it's still going to shake out. I don't think it's over yet. And I go back and forth between the Sean camp and the other camps on this one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Katie.
You know, I want to pitch in on this topic because we're a hybrid. So what you said, Sean, I mean, yeah, if you've got a brand and a company where you can be militant about the processes and the procedures and you're just cranking it out, then remote is a godsend because you've opened up your ability to hire people in all these different areas. But the second that you really need to focus on this like creative diversity and collaboration on maybe product development or product expansion or content creation or operations or any of the little parts. So I hate meetings. I don't know how you guys feel about meetings, but meetings suck the life out of me. My whole staff knows, do not fucking book a meeting with Katie. She won't have anxiety leading into the meetings. It's such a time suck. It's a waste of time. And what I have found is that being in person, things just happen faster. And we do both. My CMO is remote. My CFO is in person. And my CMO, I mean, I do things faster with him on Slack than I do on a phone call because Slack becomes just our form of communication. My CFO is right outside my office and we Slack all day long. And I could just like ask her a question verbally out loud and she'd hear me. That's how close she is, you know? But to your point about these offices, so we're building this office and fulfillment center right now. And the one that we're in currently, I wanted it to feel homey. Our new one has an exercise room. It's got where I've like implemented this. If anyone wants to have a phone call with me, my ass is gonna be on the treadmill when I'm talking to you. We have a kitchen island. We have a refrigerator. We want people, to your point, Matt, to want to stay because, you know, you'll have members of your team that are just so dedicated and just workaholics, like probably the four of us. But there's others that need the daily inspiration. And I think if you don't have that focus, then remote is harder to get more done. I think you squeeze more out of people having them work together with other people in person. That's my experience. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, but
you know, Sean, I'll add, my career started as a software engineer. Like that's my actual, like, that's what I am or was. I'm recovering. And I'll say like software product, there's like a speed element that you get when you can work on a software product and iterate on it over time. You gotta remember, like our products in our companies, they don't change that much, right? Whereas like if you're a tech company, your product is evolving weekly. And there is an element of like, if you're sitting in a little pod and you can collaborate, you do go faster. There's no question that like you can't make that process asynchronous. I don't know if that's changing with like these freaking AI tools and like all these coding assistants now. Like if you're just getting so much productivity out of that maybe you can give up that like in-person collaboration. I will say that like if we didn't have some of our product development, like our product engineering, if they weren't in person, it would take me like 5 years to develop the next Lomi instead of like 2 years. Right.
Yeah.
Just because of the hardware software cycles and how long those can be. And like, if I had to ship fucking samples back and forth just to get like hardware to my software team so they can check the firmware, like all that crap would take forever. So like I just think there's like, I don't think whole companies, I don't know that there's an argument to say like the whole company should be in person. But I do think there's like product teams and certain products where it makes a ton of sense, where I would agree with the guy that you're going to go faster and you're going to find you're going to find innovation faster.
Yeah. Where I think about this is like, what is the source of innovation in a company? Right. And like, not to make myself sound too important, but I say this, I still told this to the team today. It's like, I worry that if I die, Ridge would go out of business. And it's like, I'm not especially smart or hardworking, but the way the company is structured is everybody looking up to like the general being like, okay, which direction do we march? Right. And that, I obviously have Connor who's a general in the company in the same way. But if you look at like a Google or whatever, you need 1 million really smart people that you pay a fuck ton of money, because one of them could make an idea that ends up being $1 trillion company. Right. Yeah. And unfortunately we don't have that magic in Rich, right? The product team is very much focused on working on what they're working on, but we're not getting product ideas out of other departments.
I'll call it now, Sean. I think that the trajectory that you're on and the size that you're going to get to, you will absolutely have that muscle. It's your product ideation is not going to come from you for much longer.
Yeah.
It's just not. Like
it shouldn't. You don't want
scale, man.
Yeah, you want it to be the team that's putting it together. Yeah, it is the benefit of scale.
Yeah. And I have a fantastic product team, right? And like we are building this stuff out right now, but it's just something I'm struggling with, like, being fully remote, and like the benefits of that is it does end up looking like a military, and maybe you can build an org of the military that is, DARPA. It's just like you're focused on product development, right? And like those people are probably in person and they're touching samples and they're smelling samples or whatever, and then like they have to plug into the rest of this remote org. So anyway, people just think about it. Think about if your company is more like Google or more like the military, and listen to that podcast. It's a great podcast.
I'm actually going to I had never heard of it. And you're right. His guest list is like stupid. It's crazy.
Dude, he had Daniel Ek from Spotify on.
I'm looking at that. He just had Tim Urban, the guy that writes Wait But Why. If you guys have never read that, it's like Tim is just such a great thinker, and his writing is so entertaining. It's like the best piece of content you'll read is from Tim Urban. He's unreal. Super cool. So there's the last thing. I don't know if we've talked about this, but do we want to wrap up, or do you want to go into this lifestyle versus product company thing? Or is that the military? Did we cover it?
Look, I think we have a couple more minutes, so I think we should dive into it. I wrote this down because I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it. The lifestyle company. That was a term that came out in like 2010, I think, 2012. And what it meant was, if you sell Monster Energy is the example people always tell me, right? It's like, you are a beverage company, but people buy your merch to wear it. That means you are a lifestyle company. You represent all of these different aspects of somebody's life so much so that they want to be associated with you. And a product company would be, I don't know, Guinness or whatever, some other beverage company. It's like people buy it to use your product, right? And the real difference between those two is a lifestyle company trades at about a 50% better EBITDA multiple, right? Because you're selling this like, we're so much more than just the products we sell. We can get into any category and our loyal fan base will follow us there, right? Lululemon as a lifestyle company, people are wearing Lulu wherever they go, and they need to have Lulu because it represents a core piece of their identity versus, I just sell a widget, right? And for a very long time, Ridge was a product company. We sold a wallet to some people sometimes, right? And we're working on transitioning to like what that really means. And, you know, obviously bring up Yeti again. That's the people we're trying to model, right? Yeti is a cooler and a drinkware company. Those are products, but those products represented a lifestyle of outdoors, wild, wilderness activities. But where they're struggling is they actually hit the wall. They can't get into bags as much as they should, right? People think their bags are coolers when you wear them outside. And you're seeing kind of like the limits of what being a lifestyle company really means. So, you know,
I think I don't know that it's the lifestyle of a company, Sean. I think it's not the limit of a lifestyle. It's actually the limit of the identity, right? So like Yeti's identity is the two brothers that started it, you know, the fishing, the outdoorsmen. There is actually a ceiling to where that identity can go. You know, Lululemon's benefit is like the identity for who Lululemon, like that person is a much bigger TAM. It's got a way higher ceiling than what Yeti's is.
And return purchase.
Numbers.
The customer of a Lululemon is buying over and over and over and over again. Where Yeti, once you have so many Yetis, the nice part is they last forever and you don't need any more, right?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's definitely like an inherent product thing. And look, and I think like, yeah, and Jason, you can back this up. Like the EBITDA multiple thing is 100% true. Like there's a real premium you get when you build this big B brand thing. Like you just get it.
And doesn't lifestyle have something to do, I think, with a brand that, like, to use your two examples, I mean, to me, lifestyle brands are ones where the consumer relates to the identity of the brand. So
it's
there's
all about identity.
Yeah. So there's like a certain type of guy, right, Sean, that you're marketing to that carries the wallet and you're appealing to him because you have this lifestyle brand. Like if you carry your wallet, you know, you're the cool, like there's this projection, right? That's this cool guy and he's got this minimal wallet and it's like so badass and it's not the big puffed one with everything coming out and whatever. Product is something that that's just consumable, like at the grocery store. You know, the brand doesn't matter. Maybe.
What's interesting to me about this lifestyle brand discussion is that I feel like there's two ways of getting there, and one is the better, more sustainable way. There's Yeti that created a brand. They created a lifestyle brand in some respects, like very specifically around the way the people lived, and then there's Lululemon that just created a great product that had really mass appeal, big, larger appeal, and then the lifestyle kind of built around it, built with it. And and maybe it's just I'm overcomplicating it, and it's like Matt saying it's or what Katy's saying, it's just a bigger TAM. But it just seems to me like it's a little bit different that when you have this great product that kind of takes off in a big enough market, and then you have this ability to be a lifestyle brand, it's kind of like, I don't know who said this, you know that you have a brand when you can sell merch and you're not a merch company. Did you say that, Sean? Did I steal that from you? I might have. I don't know.
I feel like that was in our chat. That was in the chat. Yeah. I think that may have been Sean. Look, Jason, you're not wrong. And I actually think you're bang on that, like Lululemon. And I've sat with Chip Wilson at his house and like gone through like some of the history and like heard him talk about this. Like he just like, there's some of it that's like catching lightning in a bottle, where like he was early into this yoga movement in North America. And then he got to do it in this stealthy way in Vancouver, where like Nike and them just didn't pay attention. Like nobody paid attention to this little Vancouver company, right? Until he showed up in like fucking Soho. And then everybody woke up. But, you know, Lulu and Yeti, the thing they have in common is both of them became fashionable. Like they became very trendy to own. So like Lulu transitioned from you buy my leggings for yoga to you wear this shit out to the coffee, like to get coffee. Yeti went from like this cooler is like for these people who are going to get attacked by bears to like this cooler is for anybody who has a backyard. Yeah. Right. I just think that what Lulu has done in like their like active, healthy, it's for everybody, it's accessible, is just a much more appealing and like to more people kind of brand. Yeti is stuck in the, like, it's for outdoorsy, like, dudes, right? And that's there's a seasonality element to that. Like, I mean, Jason, you don't experience this, but like up here in the Northern Hemisphere, we have winter. You know what I don't use in the winter? My fucking cooler from Yeti. Yeah. Like, that's just it. I don't think about Yeti shit 6 months a year.
No, and you're totally right that, like, you know, eventually Lululemon appeals to 40% of all people or 50% of all people, because everyone wants to be healthier, everyone wants to, you know, live a better life. But Yeti's stuck at 10%. The last example of this, and we can wrap, On Running. I believe On Running, their market cap is 5% of Nike's. Yep. So, you know, 5, 7, maybe 10 years old company. Are they really worth, you know, 1/20th of Nike?
I actually think so.
Yeah,
I really do.
So, you know, in my opinion, that is they've captured the multiple of a lifestyle brand, yeah. Right?
And if it's like, go out in the world and travel around, and that brand is pervasive. Dude, I saw it all over Europe. It was in Croatia. It was in London. It was like on the plane to and from. Like, I saw those shoes everywhere, and I saw, like, so many different types of people wearing that product. It really, like, I actually wrote it down. I'm like, holy shit, they've crossed the chasm. Like, they are now on their way.
Yeah. They did a good job.
Yeah, but those are trendy things, you know, and all of a sudden the tide turns. You never know. You just never know when.
Well, until next week, you never know.
Well, Katy, it was really great to have you.
Katy, you're awesome.
This is like going to be, I don't really like listening to us talk, so I don't watch or listen to our own show. So I'm going to actually go back and listen to your story again, because I think there's so many like good nuggets in there. And I kind of want to take notes.
Dude, she's a regular member. We should get her on once a month. She'll be added to the group chat.
Friend of the pod, man. This is
I'm in.
This is great.
I love watching, so this is right up my alley.
Yeah, truly great. Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thank you all so much.
Go make some babies so you can get a diaper bag.